Okay, welcome to you all, and thank you so much for your interest in this webinar today, Implementing Animal Inclusive Practice and Australian Perspective. And I would like to warmly welcome Belinda from Lucy's Project in Australia. And I'll let Belinda introduce herself in a moment and explain a little bit about what she does. But just a few preliminaries before we get started. So I'm Rebecca, and I'm the co-director of education with the International Association of Veterinary Social Work. The session today is for an hour. Belinda has indicated that we might go over slightly, and if you can stay, if we do go over a little bit, you're more than welcome to. But otherwise, we are recording the session and we will be uploading it onto our YouTube channel if you wanted to watch the rest as well. So it's really important if you wanted to receive CE credits for this webinar, you will need to be present for the duration and complete a quiz and a survey at the end. And I'm going to post the links for those towards the end of the seminar today, okay? So once you complete these, we will issue you with a certificate, which you can access via the membership platform. And if you would like further information following this session, please don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or Lisa, who's also co-director of education, and we'll put our email in the chat as well. So I'm going to hand over to Belinda now to lead the session. Also, if anyone does have any questions throughout, put them in the chat and Belinda can address those at the end. Thanks, Belinda.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. All righty, we will get things started. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, as it may be appropriate. Nice and bright and early in Australia for us at the moment. My name is Belinda Oppenheimer, and I'm the Education and Partnerships Lead at Lucy's Project. We're an Australian charity dedicated to acknowledge the intersection of domestic and family violence perpetrated against people and perpetrated against animals. It is an honour to have been invited to address you all today, and I do hope today's presentation is educational for you, providing some insight into how we work in this space in Australia. I have tried, to keep our content a bit more broad today, but I will highlight where the information is specific to Australia. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I am presenting today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and their deep connection to the land, waters, and animals. I pay respect to the elders past and present, and I extend that respect to any Aboriginal people present today. I acknowledge the traditional custodians' strong and continuing connection to country, and I recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. I'm so sorry, Wurundjeri, it is early in the morning. I would also like to acknowledge victim survivors of domestic and family violence, including women, LGBTIQA+ people, children, and animals. And I invite us all to reflect on their strength, resilience, and resistance, and their right to be safe. We recognise that animals are victims in their own right. Again, thank you all so much for attending today's presentation. My name is Belinda and I'm the Education and Partnerships Lead at Lucy's Project, and when I'm not with Lucy's Project, I am a veterinarian. So a little bit about us. Lucy's Project is an Australian charity which aims to improve the safety of people and animals experiencing DFV through our 4 care pillars. Collaboration across sectors and services to promote a coordinated response to people with animals experiencing violence. Advocacy for policy, program, and legal change to improve the safety of people and animals experiencing violence. Research on the issues faced by people and animals experiencing DFV to develop evidence-based solutions, and education, just like this, of services and workers to increase their capacity and capability to support people and animals experiencing violence. Lucy's Project raises awareness of the link between DFV perpetrated against people and animals, and recognises that the safety and well-being of people and animals experiencing DFV is intimately interconnected. Animals are treasured members of the family for many people, and in addition to the effects of animal abuse on human victim survivors, animals also need to be seen as victims in their own right. You will hear that from me a lot. Lucy's Project, we are a very small team of 4 staff, ably supported by our volunteer efforts, and we are working remotely across 2 states in Australia. We are just about to enter our 12th year of operation and are currently planning a birthday celebration for June. Side note about our team, I am currently working with my colleagues today who are 3 very loud birds. If they are too loud, please just let me know in the chat box and I'll have words to them. So, over the following 60-ish minutes, we'll discuss consideration of animal victim survivors in our safety planning for human victim survivors of DFV. So today we'll be covering the topics of the benefits of an animal-inclusive intake process when addressing cases of domestic and family violence, how to perform animal safety and risk assessments, safety planning for people and animals once the decision is made to leave, considerations for preparation, leaving day, and for after relocation. We'll look at the options for animal placement, be that with or without their custodians. We'll look at genuine animal inclusivity in human-centric services. And if we have time, we'll quickly run through some of Lucy's Project's accomplishments of 2024. I would just like to touch on a bit of housekeeping of my own before we kick off a bit further today. We'll obviously be tackling some important but emotionally confronting topics. So please do be aware of the nature of the content of today's presentation. There are no images of abused animals, however, you may find the material distressing or triggering. If you do need to have a break or if you do need to head off, please do so. Remember that having an emotional response to this material is completely normal, so please practice self and collective care. All right, let's get started with some positives. Australia is, by and large, a nation of animal lovers. It is no secret that Australians have a great love of animals and that many animal lovers consider their companion animals to be a part of the family. Side note about our terminology. So companion animals, I'm sure you've all experienced this, but it's what most people would call pets. We prefer the term companion animals because we feel it better reflects that important role within the household. A 2022 Animal Medicines Australia survey found that 69% of Australian households had a companion animal at the time of the survey. 85% of people who keep companion animals consider them to have a positive effect on their lives. And this trend is reflected around the world. An international survey taken in 2022 found that 94% of people considered their companion animals to be family. 92% reported relinquishing their cat or dog would not be an option under any circumstances. And 89% described their relationship as close. A 2023 Australian Institute of Family Studies report, which was based on a survey undertaken in 2021, found that women were more likely than men to count animals as a part of the family. Animals, especially companion animals, can offer a person a sense of safety, consistency, security, and stability, as well as a sense of belonging. Animals can be of great comfort in times of stress, and they can alleviate symptoms of distress. There is evidence that animals can reduce anxiety, depression, social isolation, and even improve cardiovascular health. The benefits of being around animals can extend across the spectrum of companion animals, right through to animals kept traditionally on farms, assistance animals, and wildlife. We'll discuss all that in more detail shortly. As we now head into more confronting statistics, let's reflect on why we're here today: to uphold the safety of people and animals and preserve that precious bond between them. You will have experienced the incredible bond between people and animals. We also recognise the strong bond between children and the family animal. In Australia, families with children are statistically most likely to have a companion animal, with up to 86% of families with children under the age of 18 keeping at least one animal. To put it another way, Australian families with children in the household are more likely than not to have an animal in the family, and of those families are more likely than not to consider that the animal is a member of that family. For other households, such as my own, the animals we live with are referred to and seen as the kids. If we stop for one sobering minute and consider how strong the human-animal bond can be, how children and statistically more women are deeply bonded to their animals as family members, then pair that with the current statistics around DFE in Australia, we'll start to understand how prevalent this issue is and how this bond can be manipulated. The human-animal bond can be exploited or misused as a weapon of coercive control. I would just like to issue another content warning now. On the next few slides, we will be discussing the types of abuse and statistics in Australia, and they are confronting. On average, one woman a week is killed by her current or former partner. Intimate partner violence is the greatest health risk factor for women aged 25 to 44. Approximately 1 in 4 women, which equates to 23% or 2.2 million women, have experienced violence by an intimate partner since the age of 15. Domestic or family violence against women is the single largest driver of homelessness for women and children, a common factor in child protection notifications, and results in a police call out on average once every 2 minutes across the country. 13% of people have witnessed a parent experiencing intimate partner violence before the age of 15. It's critical to remember that behind each of these numbers is a life that has been adversely affected or a life that has been lost. The twin statistics in Australia of a high number of households including animals and high rates of domestic violence indicate a high prevalence of animals at risk of abuse. Research has shown that perpetrators will harm animals as part of a larger pattern of DFV, and animal abuse may be an indicator of frequent or severe forms of DFV. We consider abused animals in the context of DFV from 2 perspectives: the animal victim themselves and the effect of animals being abused as a form of coercive control on the people who love and depend on them. Animal abuse is often an indicator of people at higher risk. Sadly, when people are at risk of or experiencing DFV, their animals are at risk. When an animal is part of a family environment, assume they will need protection or consideration as well. I'd also like to highlight that while our discussion today focuses predominantly on the women and children who are at a statistically higher risk of experiencing DFV, we acknowledge the importance of animals and comparative data research on the impacts of DFE in the LGBTIQA+ community, including for those who are trans and non-binary. We also recognise that First Nations women, women from migrant and refugee backgrounds, and women with disability are at a higher risk of DFE and face additional and intersecting barriers to accessing the supports they need to be safe. An important paper was released in April 2024 by the Australian Institute of Family Studies, which is a national body responsible for research, which then goes on to inform the development of government services and policy. The study, titled Violence Against Family Animals in the Context of Intimate Partner Violence, is critical as it is such a contemporary document with the aim of informing policy, and it has an Australian focus. Their key findings, which are based on an extensive review of the research undertaken on this issue to date: evidence suggests that violence being perpetrated against animals is often associated with more severe and frequent DFV perpetrated against humans. Perpetrators often use violence against animals to control people, the animals themselves, and cause emotional distress. It goes without saying, but domestic violence perpetrated against animals has both negative physical and psychological effects on human and animal victim survivors, including children. Human victim survivors will often stay with or delay leaving or return to perpetrators due to concerns for the safety of their animals. Support that can be strengthened for humans whose animals have been victims of DFV includes screening for violence against animals, animal-inclusive safety planning, and access to animal-inclusive crisis accommodation. The APES paper recommends that these supports occur at the practitioner and service level, as well as systemically. Improved relationships and collaboration between service providers will be very beneficial to supporting human and animal victim survivors. These key findings, they provide an excellent summary and overview of the current state of matters in Australia. So now that you have a bit of background, let's start our practical discussion. I'd like to start by discussing the benefits of animal-inclusive service provision. In this context and throughout today's presentation, I am referring to traditionally human-centric services, such as services in the DFE, community services, and homelessness spaces. Service providers that are animal inclusive are more accessible and relevant to women and LGBTIQA+ people who have animals in their care. Asking about and welcoming animals validates the human victim survivor's feelings and concerns and helps to create a safe space. The workers are more likely to establish rapport with clients if they take an interest in their animal relationships. And this may be critical to gaining a deep understanding of the extent of the violence perpetrated and the safety and well-being needs of the human and animal victim survivors. There is a very strong bond between human and animal victim survivors, and animals can help to improve human victim survivors' emotional and mental well-being, including by preventing self-harm and suicide. Human victim survivors' love for their animals may also motivate them to seek help in the first place. Research has found that some LGBTIQA+ victim survivors sought help when the abuse against their animals escalated, rather than when it escalated against themselves. Keeping the human and animal victim survivors together throughout their healing journeys is to be strongly encouraged wherever possible and desired. An animal inclusive intake process recognises that animals may be victims of DFE and acknowledges that their safety is important for them and for their human family. It's noteworthy that animals may be the first target of a perpetrator, further highlighting the critical need for them to be acknowledged and protected. An animal inclusive intake process shows a client that their connection to and care for an animal is respected, and that support will be provided to ensure the safety and well-being of the whole family. This can help to build rapport with the client and establish trust, and it might trigger an awareness in the client that the animal is also a victim of DFE. It will also support risk assessment and help to identify harm and risk of harm to people and animals. As we know, there are additional barriers to support when fleeing DFE with animals, so it's important that information about DFE perpetrated against people and animals is collected at the earliest opportunity to ensure that appropriate support can be provided. Sorry, I know this slide is a little bit dense looking. As part of being an animal inclusive service, we recommend creating an animal safety assessment form for screening at intake to see if an animal or multiple animals are experiencing DFE and the risks to their safety. We acknowledge collecting all of this information, particularly in situations in which there are multiple animals in the household, could be very time consuming. So it's important to use discretion to ensure the most salient and useful information is collected for each unique situation. Useful information to collect about the animal at intake includes our basic information, so such as the name, age, sex, and the breed of the animal. If the animal is desexed and vaccinated, all these basics are very useful information should the animal be referred to a foster service or a shelter, as they'll require this information to find the most appropriate placement for the animal, and having this information recorded by multiple service providers as an extra level of security should there be ownership disputes. If the animal is microchipped, registered, branded, tattooed, or tagged, and who is listed as the legal owner. I have put this point in italic as I have listed the Australian systems of identification here, and I'm sure each of you will have different equivalents in your own countries. While I'm sure microchip legislation is very similar globally, in Australia, our large animal species are required to be identified with a property identification code or PIC tag, which needs updating whenever they change ownership or location. Additionally, the National Livestock Identification Scheme, or NLIS, provides an electronic tag for these species to ensure traceability. All these forms of identification can lead to potential privacy concerns when moving these animals if they're tagged under someone else's name. It's a good idea to establish whether the animal is a companion animal, an assistance animal, farmed animal who may also be a source of income, or a wild animal. Animals may have multiple roles. For example, a traditionally farmed species of animal who is kept as a companion. Keep in mind, these categories, while they can be useful to help us think things through, they are completely constructed. Wild animals encompass animals who are at risk on the property, or in the case of our wildlife carers, animals in care who may require alternative placement. Perpetrators may harm wild animals as a means of exerting coercive control and creating an environment of fear. Lawful killing of animals, such as the slaughter of livestock, or in Australia, the violent culling of orphaned joeys, can sometimes be used by perpetrators to distress victim survivors and children. Additionally, remember that farmed animals may also be used to produce income on which the victim survivor is reliant, so may have an intersection with financial abuse. Additionally, we should find out whether the animal has any medical or other special needs and any other information that might be relevant, such as that they're a breeding animal or used for showing. Hopefully, this safety assessment will lead to a more organic discussion of any interactions with animals the perpetrator has used to intimidate victim survivors. Create a safe place for the client to disclose anything that makes them feel uncomfortable and remind them that it's safe to talk about with you. Many victims fear that they won't be taken seriously or that the incident was trivial. Remind them that you take animals seriously. After establishing the basics and all going well, building some trust with the human victim survivor, More specific questions relating to the experiences and potential risk to the animal can be raised. To assess the risk to the animal, you could consider asking, has the animal experienced physical, verbal, emotional, social, or sexual abuse? Does the perpetrator neglect the animal or deny care for the animal? Has the perpetrator made threats against the animal? This includes threats to harm or kill the animal, or to withhold care, take or give away or sell the animal, breaking down that human-animal bond. Has the animal intervened when the perpetrator has used violence? Have you noticed any behavioural changes or issues in the animal? Does the animal have any physical or other injuries or impairments? Does anyone else have a financial or emotional interest in the animal? Have there been other animals who have been killed, died, or gone missing? As the killing of a family animal is considered an indicator of very high risk, consider asking if there have been other animals in the client's care who have been killed, died, or simply gone missing. If appropriate, ask about the circumstances surrounding the death or disappearance. Are you concerned about your children's behaviour towards animals? Studies do show that some children subjected to DFE may also deliberately harm animals. So ask if the client has any concerns about any of the children's behaviour towards animals. People can be hesitant to talk about animal cruelty as they're afraid they won't be taken seriously. They may feel embarrassment or shame about the abuse occurring, and they may have concerns their animals will be taken away from them if they disclose the violence. Remember that perpetrators often manipulate victim survivors into believing that the animal abuse is their fault. It's so important that we lead the conversation and ask the question about animal abuse, especially early in the process of the victim survivor seeking assistance. Reports of animal abuse must be taken as seriously and with the same level of sensitivity as all other disclosures of violence. And just to note that all risk assessments should be a dynamic process and must be adapted to respond to the current circumstances of the victim survivor. Risk assessments should be led by those with expertise in DFE and ideally undertaken in collaboration with relevant information provided by all organisations working with the human and animal victim survivors to build a comprehensive picture of the risk, where it is safe to do so, I will add. It's also important to take account of the human victim survivor's self-perception of risk and that of the safety of her children, animals, and any other family members. Okay, now let's look to the situation where the victim survivor has decided to leave the home with their animals. Many victim survivors delay leaving a perpetrator because they're concerned for their animals and are unable to find a safe place for them to live. We'll now look at how you can work with your clients to create a safety plan for them to leave with their animals if they wish to. We'll be sharing some ideas focused on the animal's needs and safety. Please consider them in addition to safety planning for the human victim survivors. Just to reiterate, if you don't work for a DFE service, it's best to refer people who you know are experiencing DFE to a specialist service to safety plan with them. It's crucial to remember that attempts to leave the perpetrator are associated with a significantly increased risk of harm and murder to victim survivors, and safety is the priority. While it's not ideal, we also need to address the realities of the client's situation. If the client has a lot of animals, it can be helpful to discuss whether all the animals are at risk of injury or death if they leave them, or whether they would consider temporarily reclaiming the animals or potentially giving some animals away. Please consider whether it's appropriate to ask these questions and, as much as possible, support the client to find ways to stay together or be reunited with their animals if that is their wish. This plan may look different for individual animals or different species of animals in the same household. It's also critical to acknowledge that the preferred option regarding staying or leaving while staying together with animals or not will vary for every individual. It's important that we're guided by the client's assessment of their own needs and support them within that framework. While we're treating safety planning as a formalised action today, remember that victim survivors perform these thought processes themselves unassisted every day. Clients are the experts of their own situation, and we must respect and celebrate the actions they are already taking to keep themselves safe, as well as assist them heading forward. For some, the victim survivor may wish to plan for their safety while remaining in a relationship with a partner who uses violence. However, for today's discussion, we'll now move through the overarching stages of leaving a perpetrator of DFE with animals. I'm going to pose a lot of questions which I don't have answers to, all intended to get you thinking. Like most things in life, thorough preparation gives the highest rate of success of the plan and is arguably the most important step of this process. Some critical things we should aim to have readily accessible in the process of leaving include evidence of DFE. Make notes about relevant incidents of abuse and keep text messages, voicemails, and emails, but only where it is safe for that to be done. Proof of animal ownership. If the animal isn't microchipped or registered in the client's name, collate vet bills, receipts from attending a groomer, trainer, boarding kennel, or any other animal service, photos, and other documents to prove the client is the primary caregiver. Remember that if an animal is microchipped to the perpetrator and surrendered to a pound or shelter, the animal can be reclaimed by the perpetrator, which can put the human victim survivor at risk as well. For example, the perpetrator may threaten to harm the animal to coerce a woman into returning. A grab and go bag, so a leash or a harness, a carrier, medications, certificates of vaccination, some food and water, litter trays, toys, bedding, and if there are assistance animals, bring any documents or other evidence to support this role. Have a think about transport. How would the animal be moved? In small cages or in a secure box? I have placed some extreme ends of the spectrum on the slide here. Transporting a guinea pig in a secure carrier is very different to the specialised equipment needed to transport a horse. Animals from specialised environments, such as reptiles with a need for a heat source, and aquatic animals who need to be transported in water, also need to be considered. Keep in mind, multiple species may need to be transported from the same household, and considerations need to be made for this. Accommodation. Check if animals will be allowed the desired accommodation, and if so, what kinds of animals are accepted. If the animals are going to be boarded, what are the operating hours in case the animal needs to leave with short notice? Is the boarding facility secure, and do they have any policies or protocols for DFE? It's unlikely, but it's always worth that ask to try and get the conversation happening. Similar to our questions, posed regarding transport, with accommodation, we need to consider animal special needs. Are there birds that need aviaries? Are there reptiles that need specially heated enclosures with access to UV light? Tropical fish with large tanks? Does the animal need any sort of special facilities? If the animals are going to be cared for by friends or family, how easy would it be for the perpetrator to find and reacquire them? As an example, are they going to be left unsupervised in an unlocked backyard or a paddock? This may place the animals at risk of being harmed or killed by the perpetrator. Sadly, it is also important to consider whether those caring for the animals are placed at risk by doing so. For example, a perpetrator may threaten or assault the carer to try and make them disclose information about the victim survivor. Are vaccinations and other preventative healthcare up to date? For dogs, cats, rabbits, and ferrets, and I assume this is internationally, a current certificate of vaccination is essential for most boarding facilities. And there can be significant costs involved in seeking supports related to the care and transport of animals. Some private businesses may be willing to offer reduced rates to support people and animals experiencing DFE. It's worth reaching out to try and establish these partnerships wherever possible. Let's get a little bit more in depth on large animal transport now, as this is one of the more complicated factors to be considered, and it runs a higher risk for the victim survivor due to the inherent visibility of and resources required to move our larger species. Relocating with animals who live outside, it makes it nearly impossible to hide from a perpetrator who's looking for the victim survivor or looking for the animals. It can be very difficult to hide with a large animal, and the local grapevine or someone driving by may alert the perpetrator to the animal's whereabouts. The client's safety is of the highest importance. They can't help the animal if they're not safe themselves. If it is safe to relocate with large animals, have a think about what are the local options for safe and timely transportation of large animals? Are the animals well handled and easy to transport, or will a specialist handler be needed? What are the costs and availability of local animal transportation services? Are there options for securing financial support to help cover these costs? Decide ahead of time who will move the animals. And if possible, avoid using the animal transporter that is used regularly, although we do acknowledge there's likely to be limited options in rural areas. As we previously discussed regarding tags, under the law, relocations for certain animals have to be logged. In practice, this may not occur, but some transport companies may insist. If so, you could ask that the transport be considered an emergency so that an exception can be made. No guarantees that that will be the case, though. Would the transporter be easily traceable, for example, by an electronic funds transfer to them from an account that the perpetrator has access to? Can the animals be relocated to somewhere outside the local area as an additional precaution? When moving large animals, pick a route where the transports are less likely to be seen by the perpetrator or someone who might alert them. If moving multiple animals, it's best to transport them all at once. This may require larger or multiple transport vehicles. How many people will be needed to assist on the day of leaving? And will it be safe for the client to render care to the animals at the new location, or should someone else care for the animals? It is absolutely imperative as many of these questions as possible are answered prior to initiating leaving. Okay, well, preparation is the most critical step. The day of leaving is invariably the most stressful. It's critical to remain calm as much as is feasible. This results in better decision making and assists in keeping the animals calmer as they will feed off their custodian's emotions. Work out the order in which things need to be done on the day of leaving. Some examples of what could be included: secure the animals so they're ready to leave when the clients are. Put large animals into stalls, runs, or yards, like our little donkey friend there, and small animals into a bedroom or the laundry. Provide them with food and water. Pack the family's belongings into bags and animal grab and go kits and place them into the car. Close to the time of leaving, place the small animals into pet carriers and keep in a cool, quiet place ready for collection. Have included our little bearded dragon friend here, the Snuggle Safe Pet Warmer. I'm not sure if they're available internationally, but basically they're a microwavable heat pack or a hot water bottle wrapped in a towel, good old faithful there, can serve as a temporary heat source in our emergency situations such as this. When the large animal transports arrive, load the large animals. While the transport drivers are still on the property to act as lookouts and witnesses, load the children and small animals into the car and follow the large animal transports if it's safe to do so. If clients are taking animals with them, particularly large animals, planning is absolutely essential. If animals become anxious, they could hide, run away, or be difficult to catch or transport. This in turn will affect how quickly and easily the victim survivor can leave. Animals, just like people, are reliant on routine and usually feel stressed and anxious when their daily routines are disrupted. Again, they are also very likely to pick up on stress. When animals are frightened, they can become aggressive, they can bite, scratch, or kick, even if it's not part of their normal behaviour. Support clients with what they feel will best assist them and try to remain calm and be as clear and decisive as possible with a comprehensive plan in place. Deviations will happen and flexibility is required, but a strong plan acts as a backbone for what is a very stressful time. Where it's possible and appropriate, it may be an option to seek support from the police to assist with the relocation if the victim survivor is comfortable with that option. As we're all aware, victim survivors continue to be at risk or may actually be at elevated risk of harm after leaving a perpetrator. Some clients might need to have contingency plans for their animals once they have left the home. So, some things to consider: if using boarding facilities, speak with them about the need for confidentiality. Discuss what to do if the perpetrator tries to claim the animals and who to call if the animal needs veterinary care. I've again included some representative animals here. Not all clinics service large animals, even when they're located in rural areas, and some veterinarians are not comfortable treating more unusual species at all. For some, this does include species you may perceive as commonly kept, such as rabbits, guinea pigs, and birds. I don't think that's as much of an issue in the UK, but it certainly is in Australia. Providing boarding facilities and foster carers, whoever may be looking after the animal, with details of a vet clinic which is comfortable seeing the animals, especially for those keeping more atypical species, is an excellent idea. Larger animals will likely be subject to our biosecurity and tagging obligations. Be aware of this when making our transport arrangements, as we've previously discussed, because it does provide an opportunity for the perpetrator to collect information about the victim survivor if the animals are tagged in the perpetrator's name. Many brands are easily recognisable and can identify an animal from some distance. Ear tags also increase the chance of an animal being identified. My lovely cow model here demonstrating that very clearly for us. Consider if brands or tags might alert the perpetrator to the client's new location. Consider the plan for the welfare of the animals if they do remain with the perpetrator. This will vary considerably in each unique situation and can be guided by your risk assessment for the animals and human victim survivor. Again, human safety is paramount, and a client returning to check on their animals may not be an option in many cases. If your client is relocating with their animals, there are several things that need to be considered. Let's start with seeking alternative accommodation together. For emergency, temporary, or short term accommodation, is there an animal inclusive refuge or motel where the human and animal victim survivors can stay together? For transitional and community housing or private rental, are animals permitted? Is it suitable for the animals, big and secure enough? If attempting to rent a property, consider collecting references and evidence of good care and behaviour of the animal. Submit with the application, even if not asked to. Personally, I have been a referee on animal CVs before. Laws relating to the keeping of animals vary. For instance, in some states of Australia, it is more difficult for a landlord to decline an application for a tenant to keep an animal. Things are improving though here. The tenants union or equivalent in your area will be able to provide information or advice about this. In all instances, consider whether there will be other animals, children, and people, including men, around, and how the animal is likely to respond to them. Depending on the nature of the client and the nature of your discussions to date, it may be worth advising in some situations that it may be safer if they could reduce the number of their animals by finding alternate homes, be it permanent or temporary. Remind them that their safety must be the priority, as they can't take care of any animal unless they're safe and well. Looking after themselves first is the best thing they can do for their animals. If, for whatever reason, the animals can't stay together with the client while they're seeking refuge, there are other options. Can a friend or family member take care of the animals on a temporary or permanent basis? If a friend says they can take the animal, are there any special factors to consider, like whether there's a rental agreement prohibiting pets? It may be a good idea to formalise who will be covering expenses for the care of the animal while they're being minded, just to prevent any friction into the future, as well as formalising whether the care arrangement is foreseen to be temporary or permanent. Does the client need to access an animal emergency foster care program? For example, in Australia, we have the RSPCA, Community Domestic Violence Programs. Or can the local vet or animal shelter potentially help with temporary foster care? Is there a local formal or informal foster care network where animals live in the homes of volunteer carers until they can be reunited with their human families, which would have capacity? Is there a local animal rescue group who can accommodate the animal, be it in a kennel facility or in a carer's home, until the client secures housing? Does the local council offer subsidised kennel services for women and children experiencing violence? Is a private kennel an affordable and feasible option? Is there a fee subsidy option for people who have experienced DFE? Again, just a quick note that private kennels and shelters usually require evidence that an animal's vaccination is up to date, such as a certificate. Some organisations may allow brokerage funds to be used to pay for boarding fees. It is important to be understanding when exploring these options. Invariably, community foster care programs and animal shelters are at capacity and have waiting lists for the provision of these kinds of services. They will invariably want to help and may be able to provide alternative options if they're unable to take the animals themselves. For our larger animals, are there local and affordable options for agistment? It's important to consider that they could be recognised by someone that knows the family, leading to the identification of the client's new residence, so due consideration should be put into an appropriate location if agistment is an option. Animals gain comfort from environments that are familiar, predictable, and secure. Relocating to unfamiliar surroundings can be very difficult for some animals. As an example, cats notoriously find it challenging to move to a new home. A cat used to being housed indoor and outdoor may be suddenly forced to live indoor only and has to adapt to a new household. Stress can go so far as to cause gastrointestinal and bladder issues in cats, meaning there can be physical as well as psychological impacts, all interlinked. When relocating, we can't tell animals what is going on. They have to rely on their trust in their human guardians and their instincts to feel safe. If they've been abused by humans, that trust may have been compromised. It can be really helpful to bring the animal's belongings wherever possible to provide some comfort from objects that look and, importantly, smell familiar. Animals thrive on a predictable routine, so it's best to keep their household routine as close to normal as possible or settle into a new routine rapidly, for example, with feeding times. Where feasible, it's also worth discussing an imminent change in lifestyle with the animal's veterinarian. Situational, short term anti anxiety medication may prove very beneficial for the animal's welfare. Now like to change speed, and following on from our discussion of assisting a victim survivor to leave a person who uses violence with her animals, we'll now take a look at ways in which traditionally human-centric support services can demonstrate their commitment to animal inclusivity, including for those where animals can't be welcomed on site. There is a plethora of interventions and changes we can make to ensure a service respects animal victim survivors and acknowledges the importance of their relationship with the people that care for them. These can range from minor to more dramatic changes. First up, knowledge is power, and a cohesive team working to the same belief system will be crucially important. We can't change the world unless we are adequately informed about the issue. Strong education is an ideal backbone for animal inclusivity. I'm sure everyone in our audience today has a deep love and appreciation of animals. However, you need to consider that staff and volunteers at a service, as well as clients, may not have much experience with or be particularly comfortable around animals. This could be exacerbated for clients who have been subjected to DFE, in which animals were used to cause fear or exert power and coercive control. Depending on the level of knowledge of the team, training may need to begin with recognising animals as victim survivors in the first place, an awareness of the importance of animal inclusive risk assessment, and if animals on site is a potentiality, how to appropriately and safely interact with various species of animal. This may be an excellent opportunity to partner with an animal welfare organisation for provision of animal interaction training where this is able to be facilitated. Education of clients, where it is appropriate to do so, about how animals are victim survivors of DFE shows that the service takes this matter seriously. It demonstrates that it's safe to disclose any relevant concerns, helps to increase public awareness of the issue, and is a practical demonstration of the service's commitment to animal inclusivity. If the service will be starting to welcome animal victim survivors, education about safe and hygienic animal interactions should be included as part of intake protocols. Expanding to the bigger picture, you could consider the provision of educational materials regarding animals as victims of DFE, as well as your commitment to them, to the community in general, such as via your organisation's newsletter, pamphlets, or social media. This is also an activity that could be taken up by shelters and vet clinics. Discussion of particular considerations for animals who have been victims of DFE, who may require further behavioural accommodations, may also be relevant for staff and clients. Progressing from education, having animal inclusivity ratified in service provider policy is strongly recommended. Clear guidelines help everyone know their expectations and what is able to be provided to victim survivors. Keep in mind, you don't need to do it all. Even a small change can be highly beneficial. Update existing policies to ensure animals are included in service provision, or create a specific policy on being an animal inclusive service. Update the intake, risk assessment, and safety planning processes to include animals and ensure their safety and wellbeing is considered as we previously discussed. Ask clients about their animals, listen to what they say, and take their concerns about any risks to their animals seriously. I am sure that this will never be an issue for today's audience. Take steps in order to address any concerns. Support clients to access veterinary care for their animals and to ensure the animals are microchipped and registered in the client's name. Support clients and animals to stay together where possible and desired. If they're separated, support clients, including children, to stay connected to their animals. This may be via visits if this can be facilitated, but where it can't, photo and video updates are invaluable. This will involve collaboration with other service providers, such as a boarding kennel, animal shelter, or agistment provider to orchestrate. A few more notes for if animals will be coming to the service as clients. It is an excellent idea to establish an agreement at admission regarding the expectations of the behaviour of the animal and of their custodian. This could include avoiding certain areas of the facility, toilet training, only being off lead or otherwise unconfined in certain areas, and so on. It may be worth including a clause that should the agreement not be adhered to, for the fairness and safety of other residents, the animal may need to seek alternative accommodation. Some facilities have considered requiring a behavioural assessment of animals to check their suitability prior to welcoming them on site. While this could be useful, keep in mind this may be an additional expense, take more time, and it may be a limiting factor finding someone to carry out the assessment, especially in regional or remote areas. A formalised conflict resolution protocol, should conflict arise between residents, is highly advisable, so any issues can be dealt with systematically and fairly. It may help human clients to provide a checklist as to what supplies their animal will need, as well as clarification as to what they must provide and what may be provided by your service. Zooming out a little bit further, let's look at larger scale initiatives that can be considered at a service provider level that can assist human and animal victim survivors. Of course, we maintain the best possible option for human-centric accommodation providers of all kinds is to be able to welcome animals on site. As wonderful as it would be, in Australia at least, it is unlikely that a refuge would be able to accommodate large animals on site. Lucy's project isn't aware of any that can currently facilitate this. Clients should be aware of this and any other species or animal number constraints at your facility, even if animal inclusive. Collaboration between different service providers can create referral pathways for clients. This could be particularly important where animals can't be facilitated on site, or for animal shelters, rescues, and vets encountering cases of suspect intentional animal injury or surrender due to DFV. Emergency relief programs can be expanded or new programs established to help accommodate for human victim survivors with animals. Again, these can be a helpful interim solution where animals can't be accommodated on site. Helping a human-centric service to partner with a veterinary service for provision of veterinary care where possible, or establishing an animal food bank so clients can reliably feed their animals may help keep families together where finances are limiting. Animal service providers can also consider these initiatives, and I'm aware in Australia, and I assume internationally, there are already many that are well established in this space. And while they can be difficult to find, keep an eye out for chances to apply for government and philanthropic grants in order to cover the costs associated with animal inclusive activities and services. Building partnerships with a range of service providers can result in much more robust referral pathways for clients. Consider the breadth of knowledge held by the services outlined on the slide here and how each of them would contribute to providing safety for human and animal victim survivors. We recommend reaching out to services in your local area to help establish these connections. We are all in this together to protect people and animals alike. Another quick note: to ensure that except where a mandatory report is required, consent has been obtained from the client before sharing identifying information between services. Clients may have fears about the involvement of particular agencies such as the police or child protection. A very simple action is to ensure all internal and external communications are animal inclusive. This can help to recognise animals as victim survivors, may spark this knowledge in the general public, and showcases commitment to animal inclusivity. For some, acknowledging an animal as a victim survivor in their own right can take time. Some super simple example actions that can be taken in our communications include images of people with animals in resources for staff and clients. Make website content, social media posts, and newsletters animal inclusive. Highlight that animals are victim survivors of DFE at events and meetings. Again, make sure it feels safe within the service for clients to disclose details of their animals and animal abuse to your staff. All these activities can be undertaken by any appropriate service provider. And there are simple actions that can be taken to make a traditionally human-centric environment more welcoming and accommodating to animal clients. Simply putting up a sign advising animal clients are welcome can be a positive step, though of course ensure this does clarify that there are requirements before animals are invited on site. Include a water bowl in the front of the premises. Provide a client meeting or counselling space that is animal inclusive with no access to hazards such as wires that can be chewed and potentially pictures of animals. Have treats or toys for animals available on site. Clients really appreciate their animals being considered, and treats are always a thoughtful touch, as well as making the animal more amenable to returning to your facilities in future. If there is scope to allow dogs off lead in a meeting area or attached yard, ensure secure fencing to prevent escape. Likewise, ensure any enclosed indoor areas are escape-proof and prevent animals going to areas where they're not planned to have access. Fell-away pheromone spray can provide additional calming for any cats brought to your facilities and is available at a relatively low cost, either in a spray or a diffuser. I've again put this one in italic because I'm not certain it will be available for all attendees today, depending on where you are. Great product though. Simple but effective, as well as practical, provide waste disposal bags and access to an appropriate bin for any toileting by dogs, either outdoors or any unexpected accidents inside. Consider avoiding carpeted areas when meeting clients with animals to reduce any hassle should accidents happen. Once a service has committed to including animals in their service provision, there are some additional logistics to be considered. We can try to find out whether animals are permitted in the workplace, or we can look to change the policy. The aim is to help human and animal victim survivors to recover together wherever possible, so breaking down this first barrier is an obvious necessity. If any staff, volunteers, or clients are allergic to or afraid of some animals, this should inform decisions about where animals have access and ensure rostering and tasks for workers are appropriate. As part of being animal inclusive, consider asking about how comfortable victim survivors are with animals and about any allergies they may have as a standard part of intake for all clients. Whether the liability insurance covers animals and if there are any limitations. What spaces will be designated as animal friendly or what spaces are no-go areas. How to make a safe space for animals by removing hazards such as cables and cords. Keep in mind, ornamental plants can be toxic to animals. The big one, lilies cause kidney failure in our cat friends. When it may or may not be suitable for animals to be present. As an example, if a client will be in a therapy session where they'll be very agitated, as this may distress the animal. And to be responsible with animal inclusivity, consider how animals are to be included in emergency plans, such as if evacuation of the premises is required. Nearly there. If the service is facing pushback regarding bringing animals into the service, it can be helpful to highlight their benefits. Research has found there are benefits to many by including animals in therapeutic spaces, including for other clients and staff, in addition to the animal's custodian. Animals being present can help to lower a person's blood pressure and minimise their negative reactions to stressful situations. Animals can encourage friendly interaction among people and may provide a connective link between the client and worker or between clients. Animals have been found to increase a client's willingness to share and increase openness in communication. All right, let's say a service now has things planned out, logistics have moved through well, and the first client with animals is now coming to see them, bringing their animal to the meeting. It's a good idea to ask some practical questions before welcoming animals on site. The service should ask the client, is the animal friendly and well socialised around other animals and people? Is the animal reactive towards any other animals or people? Does the animal get anxious, agitated, or distressed when in new places? Is the animal vaccinated, up to date with parasite control, and healthy? Introduction of infectious disease could be devastating and prevent services being extended to other victim survivors with animals due to the risk. Is the animal house trained or do they usually live outside? If the animal appears suitable, explore the possibility of a brief meet and greet prior to the first structured visit so that the animal can familiarise themselves with the space, people, and any other animals. The service should explain that the first meeting will be a trial and things may not go as planned. They should remind the client to keep their animal on a lead or in a carrier so they don't run away or get lost by accident. Ask them to bring any toys, bedding, or anything else their animal might need. And in the unfortunate scenario where the animal is an unsuitable candidate to be present during the meeting, the service should remain open with their custodian as to the reasoning. If all goes well and the client progresses to the first meeting with their animal, in the case of dogs, make sure they've had time outside to relieve themselves before coming in. If the animal's calm, reward this behaviour with treats or attention if the animal likes this. Rewarding calm behaviour reinforces the calmness and makes the animal more likely to be calm in future. Positive reinforcement is a basic principle of animal behaviour science, which we can use to our advantage. If other dogs and cats regularly use the space, introduce them cautiously outside the space. This way they're more likely to accept the new animal in their territory. Tandem walks of dogs on lead, where this can be facilitated, is often a gentle, calm way to introduce dogs and lets them experience something positive together while not being compatible with overly boisterous behaviour. And a simple one, make sure the animal and their belongings don't become trip hazards in the space, and ask the client to clean up after their animal. All right, we've essentially finished our structured content. We did it. Amazing. So if you've got a couple of moments, I'll just run through a few little victories we've had at Lucy's project or what we've got in the works at the moment. Thank you all again so much for your interest in this space, and I hope you have had some practical takeaways of what we've gone through so far. So just to close us out, this is some of the work Lucy's project achieved in 2024. Here are some examples of our advocacy work, which goes hand in hand with collaboration with other aligned organisations in both the human and animal sectors. We collaborated with 6 other organisations to improve access to rental housing for tenants in the Australian state of New South Wales. That's why earlier I said things were improving. They're coming very soon. Changes will come into place on May 19, such that a landlord can't refuse an animal in their rental except for a very limited set of reasons, such as if it were in violation of local council legislation. In the state of Tasmania, until last year, harm to animals was not recognised as a form of domestic and family violence, which meant that this state was an outlier compared to the rest of the country. Via advocacy efforts with other organisations to politicians, the Protecting People and Their Pets Amendment was assented last year. Tasmania now has the most comprehensive definition of animal abuse as a form of DFE, including actual harm and threats to animals, regardless of their ownership or their domestication status. And on the national scale, we were able to advocate for amendments to the Family Law Act such that when ownership of an animal is determined during separations, a history of both family violence and any history of animal abuse has to be considered, alongside the ability to financially support the animal's care, the history of ownership, and so on. We don't think this is a bad effort for a tiny team. We did host a conference in October of last year, which brought together over 30 presenters and 120 participants to explore current research relating to animals as victim survivors of DFE. The conference was very well received, with attendees reflecting in feedback on tangible changes they will make in their practices and how they'll advocate for a better way forward. We were also able to host the premiere screening of the documentary Refuge, A Duty to Care, which documents Pet Refuge, who are a boarding facility for animal victim survivors in New Zealand. Excitingly, 13 Australian politicians expressed their commitment to our cause via addresses at the conference, and the conference was recognised via a motion in Parliament in the state of New South Wales. If you are interested, most sessions were recorded and are now available for viewing on the Lucy's Project website. And finally, we are currently in the second round of delivery of our education sessions, which are an expanded version of the content you have seen today. We've got through a lot of the content from it today, so apologies for the little bit of the whirlwind getting through it all. I'm glad we were able to make it in time. We had a successful pilot program hosted over the end of last year and the beginning of this one, and we've revised the program based on feedback received to try and ensure the content is as practical and useful as possible. The sessions are open internationally, and we have had over 540 registrations so far. We do have a few sessions remaining, so if you would like to join us, you can scan the QR code and sign up. Once again, an emotional response to this material is completely normal. You may feel okay now, but start to be affected in the coming days. Please do take time for yourself to practice self and collective care. We can only do our best for victim survivors if we take care of ourselves. A list of references used in the presentation is also available if anyone is interested. So thank you all for attending today's session. We are right on the hour there. Fantastic. On behalf of Lucy's Project, I'd like to thank you all for your incredible work and thank the IAVSW for hosting us today. Thank you.
Well done, Belinda. Thank you so much. That was perfect timing. Straight on an hour.
I apologise if I talked a little bit fast. I was keeping an eye on the time, but we got there.
A lot of content, but you did well, thank you. And it's really important to have perspectives from other countries as well. So I want to thank you and Monique and your colleagues for, for delivering this today. I'd also like to thank everybody who joined today and for your interest. I have put the links for the quiz and the survey in the chat. so you'll need to complete those to get the CE credits. Melissa, thank you for your clapping hands in the chat as well. So I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you again.